Thank you both for coming to the show last time too.
Anytime. I mean, it was so much fun. We had a bunch of laughs. It felt like we were home,
That's awesome, dude.
speaking speaking Spanish and stuff. It's kind of weird that the interview is in English, so feel free to be like bilingual in it. Podemos hablarlo
No, no, I'm
en
used to it. I'm used to it. Most of the interviews are in English, even though everything I do is in Spanish. But that just makes sense, you know. It's more comfortable for people, and if I can make you more comfortable, I'll do it. But I'm used to it. Don't worry about it. It's totally
Sure,
fine. Yeah,
sure. Sounds good. All right, let's just hop in. I'm going to start with the first question. I
sure.
guess, how did you find yourself performing Spanish comedy, like especially in New York? What was the path there? Was there somebody who inspired you or anything like that?
Well, I think it was just the fact when doing comedy in English, there's a lot more things you're gonna find along the way, right? If you don't meet someone, if you don't know anybody, it's so hard for a comic. It really is, because even you would think, like in any other industry, oh, just do it by yourself. Well, you need a place, you need a mic, you need,
Of
and
course.
you're not gonna get good at it if you don't get chances. It is no secret that it's harder to get chances if you don't look or sound a certain way. And so the first show in Spanish I ever did was here, but then we said like, just there were many comedians that were good, but it's different when doing it in English. We could tell there was like a first 2 to 3 minutes that you kind of not waste, but you do have to explain where you're from or why your
Hmm.
accent sounds in a certain way, why you look a certain way, and just things like that that kind of like I think it's very limiting. I'm not saying you have to, but I'm saying that it happens. And even with professional comedians that have been doing it for years, they still have to do it. And to me, that was like very limiting. I was like, I also want to speak about any other things that I think would be more relatable in Spanish. And also, in my case, I lived in Colombia. I have cousins that are Argentinians. I got like friends from Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. It is not gonna make it's like harder to make an impression of an accent in English. Like it doesn't really translate the joke, you know? And uh and so it hits harder when you keep it in its own language, when you're not translating whatever you're telling, whatever story you're telling. So, and we just saw, I could kind of tell it was like more, or not organic or genuine, but closer to the truth that of what I was gonna say if I kept it on the
Hmm.
same language.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And now that you mention how you have friends from all over Latin America, something stuck out to me how you basically said how, people from the Caribbean have a different way of being, how we're louder, more eccentric, if you will. And then you have like South Americans who are a bit more conservative or reserved as a person. And I thought that was when you said that, I was like, my God, that's so fucking true. Like I am so inappropriate. I'm from Dominican Republic. I can be
Yeah,
very
yeah.
inappropriate, and it's like it's what I saw growing up. It's what my uncle would do. It's what my aunt would do. It's what my mother would do. She would just say the most inappropriate thing in the loudest way possible. And yeah, I just thought
It's
that stuck
also
out.
honest. So it depends on how you phrase it. It was Central Americans, by the way. Central Americans and
Oh yeah.
Mexicans are the ones that are, and then Peruvians too, which is like very funny to me. They're always like very shy, you know. And then we are very outspoken, very loud, very
Hmm.
entitled sometimes. That doesn't mean it comes from a bad place. I feel like at the end of the day, you hardly ever see people being friends with people they don't like in our cultures. You know, they don't put up with stuff. This is why New York and LA are so different, because New York is very Caribbean in general. Like it's all of us, and then there's no time for like the thing. They just go straight at it. You know. Whereas
Yeah.
like LA, it's like yeah, everything's like polite, kind of. It's got its own. There's a lot of those two ways of interacting with people. So, but yeah, you only find that. I think it also makes sense if you tell a story in English for sure. But I feel like there's certain nuance to it that it needs to be kept in the language. I feel like, at least for in my case, to get closer to the truth of the story I'm saying, um, it's better to keep it in Spanish.
Well, if you like I said, we could switch to Spanish if you want, like
Oh no
if
no
you want to
no no
go
no no! I
there.
meant as in when telling the stories on stage,
Oh,
but
okay,
no no
okay.
not at all. Yeah.
All right. Maybe could you share a bit about like the history behind stand-up comedy in Spanish? And like, do you know who came before? Like, because for me,
Uh
this was a new experience. I had never been to a Spanish comedy show in New York, but I'm sure others probably came before.
yeah, there a lot of what happens in terms of comedy in Spanish has been made by people who are international comics, right? They're international comedians, so they already have a following, right? Like
Right.
they
That
are
makes sense.
famous in either Mexico or Venezuela or Argentina. I don't know, Chile, Puerto Rico, like Dominican Republic. So they come here with a following they already have, and they connect with people usually from their own nationality. But and a lot of comics, they have done shows in Spanish, as in, oh, let's do it in Spanish this time or every once in a while, because they can, because they speak the language. Comedy starting here from people who live here, it's relatively new. It's probably been 2 years,
That's
and
awesome.
we rode that wave for sure. We were the second show in Spanish ever to be part of the New York Comedy Festival 2 years ago. Show we did was called Espanol Please. I created the first show last year in Washington D.C. It's called Gente Funny, first showcase in Spanish ever in Washington D.C. And then after that, it's been next to Nacho Redondo, who's a friend of mine and like my godfather in this, per se, like best friend, comedian I admire a lot. He's based in Mexico, but he always knew that it was so important to do comedy in Spanish in comedy clubs, because he knew that's what mattered for, like, just to be perceived in a different way, because it's not the same to do it at a theater or even like a restaurant or a bar, because you are not going to cross paths with people that have been to comedy shows, right? And so it's easier and more welcoming for people that have never been to a comedy show in Spanish to go to New York Comedy Club to see, check someone out, right? So if you've
Of
never been
course.
to a show in Spanish, but you have been to the Comedy Cellar or you've been to the improvs, you know the places, so it's familiar to
Yeah.
you. So you'll be like, okay, I'm gonna give it a shot. Whereas if it's in a Venezuelan restaurant or a Peruvian restaurant, it can be a little bit more challenging for you. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna feel out of place. It's like
Yeah.
it's less. It's a little bit more. I think it's scarier for people, for new audiences. And so he started doing that. He was actually the one that started it, but he's based in Mexico. And then I was like his guy here. And then now I'm like following his path, and we're going to different places just to start like putting the
Yeah.
seeds.
I see you growing and it's so exciting to see, honestly, that
Thank you,
this
bro.
new wave of Spanish speaking comedians are growing in the US. I think it speaks to how the culture is growing
Hmm.
and I love it. Since you were talking about was Nacho his name? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk more about the community of like Spanish comedians getting together and like
It
because like
doesn't.
a couple of friends opened for you at the show, right? And they were great. They were hilarious as well. I forgot their names, but
They're awesome. I was just with one of them, Mili Tamares. Oh well, she didn't open that show, but yeah, the Mili Tamares is one of the ones that opens for me a lot, and I've done shows with her. I've opened for her too in English. But that night we had Santiago Espinosa, who's a comedian from Colombia, Melissa
mhm.
Guevara, who's a comedian from Nicaragua, and then Abelardo, who's a comic from Miami, Venezuela too. And yeah, that's we I try to do that a lot, just try to get different voices and different accents for people, and so people can relate more to one comedian or to another, or just a different point of view, because if you keep it in the same way, it just
Yeah.
it really doesn't open up any other type of view or perspective. And so we try to do that a lot. The one I tour with all the time, you didn't get to see him that night, but he was there. His name is Daniel Castañeda. He's a comedian. He's
Mm.
from Colombia, but he started here too. So it's very similar, our approach to comedy, because we started in English. And so a lot of the structure that we use when writing is in English, but it's just in Spanish, what we're saying. And so there is a difference, this is why we get a lot of non-Spanish speaking people on the shows because they can understand a little bit of the cadence. They can tell. A lot
Yeah.
of people are just practicing, and so that happens. Yeah, that's certainly helping. But the community is pretty much it. There's really not a hub for it. There are Latino communities for comics in English. There are many different like places where they hang out and they do their parties sometimes in LA and here. But in Spanish, there really isn't as much as just it's still new. So it's still being, processed in
Yeah.
a way, but it's a lot of reaching out. So if I see that a Peruvian comic is coming or if the Peruvian comic is coming to New York and he sees that we're here, he would reach out. Like Jaime Ferraro, who's a big Peruvian comic, he did that. And he was like, "Hey, yo, Angelo, I'm friends with blah, blah, blah. I'm going to come to New York. Can we hang out? Can you open the show? Can you help me out?" Yeah, let's do it. And we did it. We helped him produce the show. And so we are like
Amazing.
that point of reference for a lot of comedians now. They come here and they text us before they get here. And that's cool. That's how we're creating little by little that community. But it's certainly easier once we all live in the same experiences, right? So I have a lot more in common with a comedian that lives here in New York than a Venezuelan comedian that lived in Venezuela forever. Because I didn't live in Venezuela forever. I've been outside for 8 years almost. And so, I
Yeah,
got more
understood.
in common with you probably as a Dominican, Dominican American, I assume,
Yeah.
than with any other Venezuelan that lived there for longer. And so it's new. It's relatively new, and we're just still seeing the results.
Awesome. Awesome. I guess we could transition to like a time that maybe you've taken a risk with your material, like testing it in different cities. I think when I saw your show, I think you were testing this drug material about the poppers, which was fucking hilarious. And of course, you thought Bushwick is the right place for me to try this out. That
Yeah.
makes total sense to me. So I'm just thinking like, maybe other times where you tested out material, maybe some fun stories relating to that.
Yeah, I mean, you're always testing new ways of telling a joke mostly. I don't consider myself it's funny because by default people would think you're woke or something. But I don't consider myself an edgy comic. That doesn't mean I don't try to like, try to speak about things that can be touchy, but I'm not looking to offend anyone necessarily. I know
Hmm.
I'm not saying comedians do, but I know some of them are more like, and they say that a lot. And good comics. Not long ago, I saw a clip of Anthony Jeselnik going like talking about comedians that go like, "Yeah, I'm a comic. I can say whatever I want, and you cannot get mad." And it's like, no, no, people can still get mad. Like just as you can say whatever you want. And so
Hmm.
I don't. To me, it's easy to test stuff because it comes from like it hardly ever comes from a place where I'm trying to make someone feel bad or something. And I
Hmm.
let them
Hmm.
know. I also do that. Luckily, the community that we're building is like really nice. So I can tell them, "Hey, can I test something with you?" And then depending on the crowd, you can kind of tell whether if you can or not. And it's funny because that joke you said now it's like one of my favorite ones. Like we've been doing that one. I've done it probably 20 times after I did it on that show, and now it's like it's in a very sweet spot. Like but that's when he was born that night, and so and we'll see when it will release it. But it's just about yeah. I think geographically speaking that helps too. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, I want to try to joke about a Mexican friend. Okay, let me try that in Chicago, right? If it's about Dominicans or Puerto Ricans, I feel more comfortable doing it here because of the feedback I get, right? Because I want the
Of
feedback.
course.
I want to see whether it is funny or not for them. Because once I was like, all right, this is my set. My set kills in New York. I'm gonna go with this joke, and this is gonna kill in Chicago. And then I spoke something about Dominicans, and there were no Dominicans in the crowd, in like a crowd of 200 people. And I'm used to have them. Like Dominicans are one of my biggest followings, right? I get along so well with
Yeah.
you, and so that was oh right, because we're in Chicago, so there are less here, right? This is more like Mexican, Central American, and I was like, okay, now I know. So my approach, I can still say it, but my approach is different now. It's like, you don't know Dominicans, but let me explain them to you. They're gonna get here eventually. Now it's different. Now,
Eventually, that's true.
yeah, I say it because we're everywhere. I mean, Venezuelans, Dominicans, we're like little by little more and more and more, and so uh, it's a different approach. So that's the way we test our stuff. We take a risk,
Cool.
let's say, yeah.
I mean, as you know, at Idioma, what we do is we usually interview painters and sculptors and people who make, I guess, physical art. And I don't think people view comedy as art as they should. I mean, when I think of the greats like Dave Chappelle or someone like that, to me, that's art. And I just wanted to see what your thoughts are regarding comedy as art. Do you view it that way? Do you think it should be on a pedestal just like the painters and the sculptures, etc.? What do you think about that?
I think I'm actually reading a book at the moment. It's called Comedy Book. It's Jesse, is it Fox's last name? I don't know his last name. I'm sorry. But he actually speaks about like how comedy is a lot what music was in the 70s or the 80s and the importance of this art form because it is an art form because comedy used to be perceived before as a it would be seen or studied from the joke point of view, right? But
Hmm.
but comedy is way more than a joke point of view now, right? Now you have stories for people, and every story is so different. I can say it's one of the purest art forms because there are less things you depend on. You don't even need a mic to do comedy. You just need your
It's true.
voice. There's really no way of cheating on it, right? There's really no, yeah, it's just like Chris Rock said that not long ago too in a documentary I saw. It's called Headliners Only. It's on Netflix. It's him and Kevin Hart, and he says he's talking about being funny. It's subjective, blah blah. It's subjective, but killing on stage, it's not subjective. That can you can feel that, like the crowd can feel
Yeah,
that, even if you don't like a comedian, if you see people are laughing and because the laughter and just laughing is such a genuine reaction to something, right? It's like being
it's
terrified
natural.
at something. It's natural. There's no way of really stopping it. And for that second that it happens, you forget about everything pretty much. Like you can be dying, literally. The closest person to you could be in a horrible, position in life or whatever. But if something makes you laugh, you're gonna laugh. There's no stopping to it. And
For sure.
that's just art. I think that's what art generates or creates, I think. But I also think that I hardly ever speak about something like that because I feel like I'm not there yet, like I haven't credit, but I do feel that we're exposed and it's different for an actor or even a musician because what they are saying on stage is not necessarily real. As
Hmm.
an actor, you're
Hmm.
performing somebody else's word sometimes. And then for musicians too, or even if it's not, you can be saying it's an analogy. Whereas for comics, you don't separate the art from the artist. A comedian is the same person. A comedian is usually the people they are on stage. Like that's their true self. That's how it is normally, or that's how they create. Really, the great say it. That's when I'm me. That's when I'm 100% me when I'm on stage. Then I'm pretending to be nice and whatever. But
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of
mhm.
sense. I mean, for some reason, I thought of like maybe when you see a Cubist painting of Picasso, like you know that that's him. It's his style. It's him. In a way, it's a portrait of himself. I think it's super interesting to think of comedy in this way. It's not talked about enough, especially in this context. And we're seeing a new wave of artists of like exhibitions in the MoMA relating to Latin American art. I saw the other day like short films from Dominican Republic being
Oh,
exhibited in
nice.
the MoMA. And these things are happening at the same time you're coming up with your comedy. And I think I think something really important is happening, and I'm glad to like be able to take some time and talk about this with you. Thank you so much for coming through and sharing all that information.
Oh, dude, for sure. And I could not agree more. I feel like any other community, it's just harder for us. And I have the privilege and the luck and however you want to call it. I am the happiest person in the world at the moment. Like I love what I do. I love seeing people. I love meeting different people and learning and I get to meet. I think I've already met probably a Latino from every country of Latin America at this point for sure, and I can see how different we are, and that we're so different, yet we're put in the same category
That's
but
true.
we don't completely become like a very strong community. We are strong because we're a lot, but we're not a community because there are very few things that can connect us all. And music has created that specifically in Spanish, which is like to me was like crazy. Like it's not like an artist that would sing in English, a Latino artist would connect all the Latinos. Like, sure, you have the Shakiras and the Ricky Martins, but
Yeah,
that doesn't really. I don't think like they were very important, and they are very important for our
yeah.
history
We're
and like
talking
being
about the
seen.
Bad Bunny phenomena,
Yes, and not
basically.
only Bad Bunny, but like you could even tell like it's funny on how every Latino from every nationality could probably sing "Como la Flor" de Selena.
Oh yeah.
But it's in Spanish.
It
And
is.
it's harder to find one song in English coming from Latinos that every Latino knows as much as one in Spanish. And I feel like that is because even if you don't know Spanish, you have heard the music and then you've heard it from your parents. And your parents clearly know the ones in Spanish. And so this is why reggaeton has been so important for what we've been doing, regardless of what you like, whether you like it or not. It's just
Yeah. It's because language is that one thing that connects us, for sure.
yes. And that's what I
It's
get in my shows. I get people with their parents all the time.
and
I get
that's
people
why
with their
that's why the project is named Idioma Studio. This is like I
nice.
knew that was like the what connected Latinos and how this project could possibly be something that, connects with all of us.
That's awesome. Well, let me know whenever I can help with anything. I'll be pleased. Yeah, especially since I know. Are you both Dominican?
Yeah, we're both Dominicans.
You're the
Different from
best.
us is that we
My favorite Latinos. I keep saying it on stage. I don't care if
yeah, I
there's
know.
nobody. I just love
Siempre
them.
hay
And
uno en el público. Si total que
y
no hay
ya
uno.
me hace el show. Ya cuando hay uno y yo le digo ya es como it's always him or her and I. It's like I don't care whether. No, I just yeah, I think you got the best of everything. I connect with your people a lot. I yeah,
Thank you, thank you. I like hearing that. Yeah, just some extra info. I actually grew up in DR, and that's why
nice.
I sometimes feel a little disconnected with Dominicans
Hmm.
that are from
Of
here, from
course.
New York, and grew up in New York. So it's a different experience, and there's little nuances and differences that we have as well. A lot of these Dominicans haven't even been to Dominican Republic, which is crazy when you think about it,
Yep.
or speak
Yeah.
much Spanish.
And in your case, you're like a 1.5 type of thing because you speak perfect English. Some others don't speak English, right? And then there's like they probably see you the same way you can see some Dominicans that have never been to the Republic. It's like,
Yeah.
but he's like gringuito, he's not. And that happens, with you can see that with Puerto Ricans and Boricuas because they have that difference, right? And I
Yeah,
just
for
love
sure.
it, man. I'm just very passionate about it. I don't. I would even love to have the time to study more, and I know I will throughout my career. But I'm so committed to this. I'm in love with it, and I feel like we have something great going on, and I think it's very meaningful, as cheesy as it sounds. And so, yeah, this is just the beginning.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I don't want to take more of your time, but I did just remember something. I think I saw you were going to work with Netflix. Is that?
Well, I have a show which is gonna be in Spanish, which is gonna be part of the Netflix is a Joke Fest. and I think there's only 3 shows in Spanish.
Well,
And
that's
so
fucking awesome.
yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you, bro. Thank
Looking
you.
forward to
Super
that.
happy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's almost sold out already too. Like our people, it's one of the few shows sold out. If you go to the website, like ours is gonna be sold out probably by tonight or tomorrow. And that's big, man. It means it people know what it means and they're just there. And again, it's just I'm just privileged and lucky enough.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time, man. And see you soon. We'll talk soon.
Yeah.